In the glow of a forgotten phone, one accidental image shattered the wall between duty and desire. When Daniel Hayes saw what he was never meant to see, he couldn't unsee her, not as his friend's mother, not as the untouchable billionaire, but as the woman who would change everything. This is the story of a single father who found himself standing at the edge of a choice that could destroy him or save him, and the powerful woman who refused to let either of them hide anymore. If you're watching this, stay until the end. This story doesn't go where you think it does. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. Daniel Hayes stood in his kitchen at 11:30 on a Thursday night, washing the same coffee mug for the third time because his brain wouldn't shut off. The apartment was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of traffic below. His daughter, Emma, had been asleep for 2 hours. She was 6 years old, small for her age, with his dark hair and her mother's stubborn chin. She slept in the only bedroom while Daniel took the pull-out couch in the living room. It wasn't much, but it was theirs. He set the mug in the drying rack and looked around the small kitchen. The linoleum was cracked near the stove. The cabinet doors didn't close all the way. But the place was clean, organized, functional. That was how Daniel lived his life now, functional. He worked as a data analyst for a mid-sized logistics company, the kind of job that paid just enough to keep the lights on and food in the fridge, but never enough to feel secure. Every month was a careful calculation of rent, daycare, groceries, utilities. There was no margin for error. He dried his hands on a dish towel and walked into the living room. The couch was still folded out from the night before. He hadn't bothered putting it away that morning because what was the point? He'd just pull it out again in a few hours. On the coffee table sat a stack of Emma's drawings, crayon scribbles of stick figures and lopsided houses. He picked one up and smiled despite the exhaustion pulling at his shoulders. She'd drawn the two of them holding hands under a yellow sun. No one else in the picture, just them. That was the truth of it. There was no one else. Emma's mother had left when she was 8 months old. No warning, no explanation that made sense. Just a note on the counter one morning that said she couldn't do it anymore. Daniel had read that note so many times in the first year that he'd memorized the handwriting, the slant of the letters, the way she'd press too hard on certain words. He didn't read it anymore. He'd thrown it away 2 years ago, but he still remembered every word. He folded the drawing carefully and set it back on the pile. Then he heard the knock. It was a light knock, almost apologetic. Daniel glanced at the clock on the microwave. Who the hell knocked on doors at 11:30 at night? He walked over and looked through the peephole. Standing in the hallway was Ryan Sterling, his friend from college. Ryan was 28, 4 years younger than Daniel, and everything about him was easy in a way that Daniel had never managed. Easy smile, easy confidence, easy life. He was the kind of guy who'd never had to choose between buying groceries and paying the electric bill. Daniel opened the door. Ryan. What's up? Ryan grinned, running a hand through his hair. He was dressed in dark jeans and a jacket that probably cost more than Daniel's rent. Hey man, sorry to just show up. I was in the neighborhood and figured I'd stop by. Daniel stepped aside to let him in. In the neighborhood? You live on the other side of the city. Okay, fine. I was at a thing downtown and it ran late. Thought I'd swing by and see if you were still awake. Ryan looked around the small apartment like he always did. Not with judgment, but with the kind of curiosity people have when they visit a world they don't really understand. Emma asleep? Yeah, has been for a while. Daniel closed the door and gestured toward the couch. You want a beer or something? Nah, I'm good. I can't stay long. Ryan sat down anyway, leaning back against the cushions. Just wanted to check in, see how you're doing. Daniel sat in the chair across from him. I'm fine. Same as always. Yeah, but that's the thing. You're always fine. You ever get tired of being fine? Daniel didn't answer that. Ryan had a habit of asking questions that didn't have good answers. They'd met in college, back when Daniel's life had still felt open-ended, before Emma, before the responsibility became the only thing that mattered. Ryan had been a sophomore when Daniel was a senior, and they'd ended up in the same study group for an economics class. They'd stayed in touch after graduation, though their lives had gone in completely different directions. Ryan worked for his mother's company now, Sterling Enterprises, a corporate empire that Daniel only understood in the vaguest terms. Something to do with real estate development, venture capital, tech investments. The kind of money that didn't just sit in a bank account but moved, grew, built things. They talked for a while about nothing important. Ryan told a story about a disastrous pitch meeting where the projector had caught fire. Daniel half listened, nodding at the right moments. His mind kept drifting back to the stack of bills on the counter, the overdue notice from the daycare, the email he'd gotten that afternoon from his boss about performance concerns. He didn't mention any of it. Ryan didn't need to hear about that. Around midnight, Ryan stood up and stretched. "All right, I should get going. Early meeting tomorrow." "Yeah, thanks for stopping by." They walked to the door together. Ryan pulled his jacket tighter and stepped into the hallway. "Hey, you should come by the office sometime. I'll give you a tour. It's pretty insane." "Yeah, maybe." Daniel knew he wouldn't. The idea of walking into that world, even as a guest, made his chest tighten. He didn't belong there. Ryan waved and headed down the hall. Daniel closed the door and locked it. He turned back to the living room and saw it immediately. A phone. It was sitting on the couch where Ryan had been, half hidden between the cushions. A sleek black smartphone in a leather case. Daniel picked it up, meaning to call after Ryan, but the screen lit up at his touch. And that's when he saw it. The notification was still on the lock screen. A message preview from a contact labeled simply V. But it wasn't the text that froze him in place. It was the image attachment that had loaded automatically. A photo. Not explicit, but intimate. Private. A woman in a bedroom mirror wearing something meant only for someone else to see. The lighting was soft, the angle deliberate. She wasn't facing the camera directly, but he could see enough. The curve of her shoulder, the line of her waist, the way her dark hair fell across her back, and he recognized her. Victoria Sterling, Ryan's mother. Daniel's hand went numb. He almost dropped the phone. His brain struggled to reconcile what he was seeing with what he knew. Victoria Sterling was 51 years old, though she looked a decade younger. She was the CEO of Sterling Enterprises, a woman whose name appeared in business journals and Forbes lists. He'd met her exactly 3 times in the 8 years he'd known Ryan. Twice at graduation events, once at a dinner Ryan had insisted he attend. She'd been polite, distant, the kind of person who shook your hand and forgot your name 2 seconds later. She existed in a different atmosphere, one where people like Daniel didn't register. But this wasn't that woman. This was someone else entirely. He stared at the image for 5 seconds, maybe 10, long enough for it to burn into his memory. Then the screen went dark, and he was standing alone in his living room holding someone else's phone like a criminal. He set it down on the coffee table like it might explode. His heart was pounding. He felt like he'd walked in on something he had no right to see, which was exactly what had happened. The message wasn't meant for him. It probably wasn't even meant for Ryan, but he'd seen it, and now he couldn't unsee it. He paced the length of the living room, running his hands through his hair. This was bad. This was so unbelievably bad. Ryan's phone, his mother's photo. Jesus Christ. He needed to get the phone back to Ryan immediately, pretend this never happened, erase the image from his mind, even though he knew that was impossible now. He grabbed his own phone and texted Ryan. "You left your phone here." No response. Ryan was probably already in his car, halfway across the city. Daniel waited 5 minutes, staring at the screen. Nothing. Then came the knock. This time it wasn't light or apologetic. It was firm, deliberate, 3 sharp raps. Daniel's stomach dropped. He already knew who it was. He walked to the door and looked through the peephole. Victoria Sterling stood in the hallway, dressed in a long coat, her expression unreadable. She looked exactly like she had at every formal event he'd ever seen her at. Composed, controlled, a woman who didn't waste time on things that didn't matter. Daniel's mouth went dry. He thought about pretending he wasn't home, but his shadow was probably visible under the door. He thought about shoving the phone under the couch and claiming he hadn't seen it, but that was idiotic. She was here for a reason. He unlocked the door and opened it. Victoria's eyes met his, and for a moment neither of them spoke. Up close, she looked different than he remembered, sharper, more real. She wasn't wearing the carefully constructed mask she wore in boardrooms and conference halls. There was something raw in her face, something guarded, but not hidden. "Mr. Hayes," she said quietly. Her voice was calm, but there was an edge to it. "I believe my son left his phone here." Daniel nodded. "Yeah, he did. I texted him, but he's already home. He called me from the car and asked me to pick it up." She glanced past him into the apartment, then back at his face. May I come in? It wasn't really a question. Daniel stepped aside and she walked past him into the living room. She moved with the kind of confidence that came from never doubting you belonged somewhere. She saw the phone on the coffee table and picked it up, checking the screen. Then she looked at him. Did you see it? She asked. Daniel felt his pulse spike. See what? Don't. Her voice was quiet but firm. I can tell when someone's lying. Did you see the photo? He could have lied. He could have played dumb, acted confused, forced her to spell it out. But something in her eyes stopped him. She wasn't angry. She wasn't embarrassed. She was just asking. Yeah, he said. I saw it. Victoria didn't flinch. She didn't look away. She just nodded slowly, like he'd confirmed something she'd already known. I thought so. The silence that followed was suffocating. Daniel had no idea what to say. I'm sorry felt insulting. It was an accident felt like an excuse. He settled for the truth. I didn't mean to. The screen lit up when I picked it up. I wasn't trying to. I know. She slipped the phone into her coat pocket. It's fine. It's not fine. That was private. I shouldn't have. You shouldn't have, she agreed. But you did. And now we're here. She looked around the apartment again, taking in the small space, the folded laundry on the chair, the stack of Emma's drawings. Her gaze lingered on the couch, still pulled out into a bed. This is where you sleep? Daniel crossed his arms. Yeah. And your daughter has the bedroom. She's 6. She needs her own space. Victoria's expression softened just slightly. Ryan talks about you sometimes. He says you're the most responsible person he knows. I don't know if that's a compliment or just sad. It's both. She turned back to face him, and for the first time he saw something shift in her eyes. Not pity, not sympathy. Something else. Recognition, maybe. You saw the photo. So now you know something about me that most people don't. I'm not going to tell anyone. I know you won't. She took a step closer. But you're going to think about it. You're going to wonder why I sent it, who it was for, what kind of person does that. You're going to see me differently now. Daniel didn't deny it, because she was right. I already do, he said quietly. Victoria tilted her head slightly, studying him. And how do you see me now? He hesitated. This was dangerous territory, but she'd asked a direct question, and something in her tone told him she wanted a real answer. Like you're a person, he said finally. Not just Ryan's mom, not just some billionaire CEO. A person. She held his gaze for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, she smiled. It wasn't a polite smile or a professional smile. It was real, and it changed her entire face. That's the nicest thing anyone said to me in a long time, she said softly. The air between them shifted. Daniel felt it, the way you feel a change in temperature or pressure before a storm. This wasn't a casual conversation anymore. This was something else. I should go, Victoria said, but she didn't move. Yeah, Daniel agreed. He didn't move either. They stood there, two people who had no reason to be in the same room, looking at each other like they were trying to solve a puzzle they didn't have all the pieces for. Finally, Victoria broke the silence. I'm having dinner tomorrow night. Just me. No business, no obligations. If you're free, you should come. Daniel blinked. What? Dinner. You and me. Somewhere quiet. She said it like it was the most natural thing in the world. I'd like to talk to you. About what? I don't know yet. She pulled a business card from her coat pocket and set it on the coffee table. Think about it. If you decide to come, text me. If you don't, I'll understand. She walked to the door and Daniel followed her. She paused in the doorway and looked back at him one last time. For what it's worth, she said, I'm glad it was you who saw it, and not someone else. Then she was gone. Daniel stood in the open doorway, staring at the empty hallway. His mind was racing. His hands were shaking. He closed the door and locked it, then leaned against it, trying to process what the hell had just happened. On the coffee table, next to the stack of Emma's drawings, sat Victoria Sterling's business card. He picked it up. Her name was embossed in silver letters. Below it, a phone number. Nothing else. Daniel turned the card over in his fingers, feeling the weight of it. This was insane. He couldn't go to dinner with her. She was Ryan's mother. She was a billionaire. She was completely out of his league in every possible way. This was a terrible idea, but he kept holding the card, because for the first time in longer than he could remember, someone had looked at him and seen more than just a struggling single dad trying to hold his life together. She'd seen him, really seen him, and she'd asked him to dinner. Daniel walked over to the window and looked out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, Victoria Sterling was driving home to a life he couldn't imagine. And somewhere in this apartment, his daughter was asleep, trusting him to make the right choices. He should throw the card away. He didn't. Instead, he set it on the counter next to the stack of unpaid bills and went to bed. The next morning started the way every morning started. Emma's alarm went off at 6:30, a cheerful jingle that Daniel had grown to hate. He dragged himself off the couch, folded it back up, and went to wake her. She was already sitting up in bed, clutching her stuffed rabbit, her hair sticking up in every direction. "Morning, kiddo," Daniel said, leaning against the doorframe. "Morning, Daddy." She rubbed her eyes. "Can we have pancakes?" "We had pancakes yesterday." "So?" He smiled despite himself. "So, we're having cereal today." She pouted but didn't argue. That was Emma, easy, adaptable, the kind of kid who rolled with whatever life threw at her because she didn't know any different. Daniel wished he could give her more. Pancakes every morning if she wanted. A bigger apartment. A mother who hadn't walked away. But he couldn't. So he gave her what he had: cereal, clean clothes, and 15 minutes of cartoons before they had to leave for daycare. He dropped her off at 7:45, right on time. The daycare was in a converted church basement, run by a woman named Margaret, who had 4 kids of her own and treated every child like they were hers. Emma hugged him goodbye and ran off to join the other kids without looking back. Daniel watched her go, feeling the familiar ache in his chest. She was getting older, more independent. Someday she wouldn't need him the way she did now. He drove to work in silence, the radio off, his mind already spinning through the day's tasks. There was a meeting at 9 about the new logistics software implementation, a report due by noon, emails to answer, problems to solve, the endless grind of staying employed. But underneath all of it, he kept thinking about the card on his counter. He thought about it during the meeting, barely listening as his boss droned on about optimization metrics. He thought about it while eating lunch at his desk, staring at his phone like it might make the decision for him. He thought about it on the drive to pick up Emma, and while making dinner, and while reading her a bedtime story. By 8 o'clock, Emma was asleep, and Daniel was alone again. He stood in the kitchen, staring at the business card like it was a live grenade. This was stupid. He should just forget the whole thing, delete her number, pretend last night never happened. Go back to his quiet, predictable life where nothing surprising ever happened, and that was fine because at least it was safe. But he didn't want safe. He wanted to know what it felt like to be seen. Daniel picked up his phone and typed out a message before he could talk himself out of it. "This is Daniel Hayes. I'm free tomorrow night." He hit send and immediately regretted it. His stomach twisted into knots. What the hell was he doing? This was going to end badly. She was going to realize he didn't belong in her world and cancel. Or worse, she'd go through with it out of politeness and spend the entire evening regretting the invitation. His phone buzzed. "Good. I'll send you the address." 7 o'clock. Daniel stared at the screen. That was it. No small talk, no hesitation, just a time and a promise. He set the phone down and exhaled slowly. Tomorrow night he was having dinner with Victoria Sterling, and he had no idea what the hell he was getting himself into. The restaurant was the kind of place Daniel had only seen in movies. Soft lighting, dark wood, tables spaced far enough apart that conversation stayed private. A hostess in a black dress led him through the dining room to a corner booth where Victoria was already seated, a glass of red wine in front of her. She looked up as he approached, and for a split second, he saw something flicker across her face. Relief, maybe, or surprise that he'd actually shown up. "Mr. Hayes," she said, gesturing to the seat across from her, "I'm glad you came." "Daniel," he said, sliding into the booth. "You can call me Daniel." "All right, Daniel." She smiled faintly. "And you can call me Victoria. I think we're past formalities." A waiter appeared, asked if he wanted a drink. Daniel ordered a beer, then felt immediately self-conscious about it. Victoria didn't seem to notice. When the waiter left, she leaned back and studied him with the same intensity she'd had in his apartment. "You look nervous." "I am nervous." "Why?" Because I don't know why I'm here. Victoria swirled the wine in her glass. Neither do I, if I'm being honest. That caught him off guard. Then why did you invite me? Because I wanted to. She set the glass down. And I don't do things I want very often, so when the impulse strikes, I try to follow it. Daniel didn't know what to say to that. The waiter came back with his beer and they ordered food, something Daniel barely registered because his brain was too busy trying to figure out what was happening. You're wondering if this is a mistake, Victoria said once they were alone again. Aren't you? Probably. She smiled, and it was that same real smile from the night before. But I'm here anyway. They talked, and it was easier than Daniel expected. Victoria asked about Emma, and he told her about the crayon drawings and the pancake negotiations, and the way she hummed to herself when she thought no one was listening. Victoria listened like she actually cared, not in the polite, detached way people usually did when he talked about his daughter. She sounds wonderful, Victoria said. She is. She's the only thing I've ever done right. That's not true. You don't know me well enough to say that. Maybe not. But I know what it looks like when someone's barely holding it together and still shows up every day. You're doing more than you think. Daniel looked down at his beer. It doesn't feel like it. It never does. Victoria's voice was quiet. I spent the last 20 years building a company, raising a son on my own, proving to everyone that I could do it all. And you know what? I did. I built an empire. I raised a good kid. I made more money than I'll ever spend. And I still wake up some mornings and feel like I'm failing. Daniel looked up. Why? Because no one sees me. They see the CEO, the billionaire, the woman who has everything, but they don't see me. She met his eyes. Until you did. The words hung in the air between them, heavy and undeniable. I didn't mean to, Daniel said. I know. That's why it mattered. The food came, and they ate slowly, the conversation drifting to safer topics. But the weight of what she'd said didn't leave. It sat there between them, impossible to ignore. By the time they finished, it was almost 10. Victoria paid the check over Daniel's half-hearted protest. They walked outside into the cool night air, and she turned to him. I'm glad we did this, she said. Me too. Can I ask you something? She hesitated, and for the first time she looked uncertain. Do you think less of me? Because of the photo? Daniel shook his head. No, I think you're human. Same as everyone else. Victoria's expression softened. That's all I wanted to hear. They stood there on the sidewalk, and Daniel felt the pull again. The same pull from his apartment, the same pull from across the table. The sense that something was shifting, something he couldn't name or control. I should go, he said. Yeah, you should. But she didn't move. Neither did he. Then her phone rang. Victoria pulled it out of her pocket and glanced at the screen. Her whole body tensed. It's Ryan, she said. Reality came crashing back. Ryan, her son, his friend, the reason this was complicated in the first place. She answered. Hey, sweetheart, what's up? Daniel couldn't hear the other side of the conversation, but he watched her face shift, back to the composed, controlled version of herself. The CEO. The mother. The woman who had everything under control. When she hung up, she looked at him, and for a moment he saw the conflict in her eyes. I have to go, she said. I know. She hesitated, then reached out and touched his hand. Just for a second, just long enough for him to feel the warmth of her skin. This isn't over, she said softly. Then she walked away, and Daniel stood alone on the sidewalk, his heart pounding, his mind racing. He didn't know what this was. But she was right. It wasn't over. Daniel didn't sleep that night. He lay on the pull-out couch, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of the dinner in his head. The way Victoria had looked at him across the table, the weight of her hand on his before she walked away. The words she'd said, this isn't over, that kept circling in his mind like a question he didn't know how to answer. By the time Emma's alarm went off, he'd been awake for hours. He went through the morning routine on autopilot, cereal, cartoons, the drive to daycare. Emma chattered about something her friend had said yesterday, and Daniel nodded in the right places without hearing a word. His mind was elsewhere. At work, he couldn't focus. The meeting about the logistics software dragged on forever. his boss droning about implementation timelines while Daniel stared at his laptop screen without seeing it. He checked his phone twice, 3 times, hoping for a message that didn't come. Then he felt stupid for hoping. Around 11, his phone buzzed. He grabbed it so fast he almost knocked his coffee over. "How's your day going?" It was from Victoria. Daniel stared at the words, his heart kicking up. He typed a response, deleted it, typed another one. "Busy." "Yours?" 3 dots appeared immediately, then disappeared, then appeared again. "Terrible. I've been in back-to-back meetings since 7. I keep thinking about last night." Daniel's throat went dry. He looked around the office like someone might be reading over his shoulder. "Me too." The response came fast. "Good. I was worried it was just me." He didn't know what to say to that. Before he could figure it out, another message came through. "I want to see you again." Daniel's chest tightened. This was moving too fast. He should pump the brakes, slow things down, think about what he was doing. But his fingers were already typing. "When?" "Tonight. Same place. 7 o'clock. He hesitated. 2 nights in a row felt deliberate. It felt like a line being crossed. Okay. He sent it before he could change his mind. The rest of the day crawled by. Daniel went through the motions, answered emails, updated spreadsheets, pretended to care about the performance metrics his boss kept harping on, but his mind was already somewhere else. He left work at 5, picked up Emma from daycare, made her dinner. She wanted macaroni and cheese, so that's what she got. While she ate, he texted his neighbor, Mrs. Chen, a retired teacher who sometimes watched Emma when he needed help. "Any chance you could watch Emma tonight? Just for a couple hours." "Of course, bring her over any time," like relief and guilt hit him in equal measure. He'd never asked Mrs. Chen to babysit for something like this. It was always work emergencies or doctor's appointments. Never something he wanted. By 6:30, Emma was settled at Mrs. Chen's apartment with a stack of coloring books and a promise of ice cream if she was good. Daniel drove across the city with his stomach in knots, second-guessing every decision that had led him to this moment. Victoria was already there when he arrived, sitting in the same corner booth. She looked different tonight, less composed, more tired. Her hair was pulled back, and she wasn't wearing the carefully constructed armor she'd had on the night before. She looked like a woman who'd had a long day and didn't have the energy to pretend otherwise. "Hi," she said when he slid into the booth. "Hi." They ordered drinks. Wine for her, beer for him. The waiter left, and silence settled between them, not uncomfortable, but heavy with everything they weren't saying. "I wasn't sure you'd come," Victoria said finally. "I wasn't sure either." "But you did." "Yeah, I did." She smiled faintly, wrapping her hands around her wine glass. "I've been thinking about what I said last night, about no one seeing me. That probably sounded dramatic." It didn't. It felt dramatic when I said it. She took a sip of wine. "I don't usually talk like that. I don't usually talk to anyone like that." "Why me?" Victoria met his eyes. "Because you're not trying to get anything from me. Everyone else in my life wants something. A promotion, a deal, access, approval. Even Ryan, as much as I love him, he needs things from me. But you? You don't need anything I have." Daniel thought about the overdue daycare bill, the performance review hanging over his head, the constant low-level panic about making rent. That's not true. I need a lot of things. But not from me. You didn't even want to be here tonight. You came anyway, but you didn't want to. She was right. He had fought with himself the entire drive over, half hoping she'd cancel. But she hadn't. "So why did you come?" she asked. Daniel turned his beer bottle in slow circles on the table. "Because I wanted to know if last night was real. Or if I made it up in my head." "What do you think?" "I think it was real." Victoria's expression softened. "So do I." The food came, and they ate slowly, the conversation drifting into safer territory. She asked about Emma again, and he told her about the ice cream bribe and Mrs. Chen's apartment that smelled like cinnamon. Victoria laughed, a real laugh, not the polite sound she probably used in boardrooms. "You're a good father," she said. "I'm doing my best." That's all anyone can do. She set down her fork. "I wasn't always good at it, being a mother. When Ryan was little, I was building the company, and I told myself I was doing it for him, for us. But the truth is, I was doing it for me. Because I needed to prove I could. Did you? Yeah, I proved it. And then I looked up one day and realized my son was 12 years old and I'd missed most of it. Daniel didn't know what to say to that. He thought about Emma's drawings on the coffee table, the way she hummed to herself, all the little moments that made up a life. You didn't miss everything, he said. Ryan turned out okay. He did, but not because of me. He turned out okay in spite of me. Victoria's voice was quiet. You want to know why I sent that photo? The question caught Daniel off guard. He'd been trying not to think about it, trying to pretend it didn't matter. But it did. Why? He asked. Because I wanted to feel wanted, not needed, not respected, not admired, just wanted, as a woman. Not a CEO or a mother or a name on a business card. Just me. She looked down at her wine. It's pathetic, isn't it? No. It feels pathetic. It's not, Daniel said firmly. Everyone wants to feel that. You're not different just because you have money. Victoria looked up at him, and something shifted in her expression. You really believe that? Yeah, I do. She reached across the table and took his hand. Not like she had the night before, quick, fleeting. This time she held it, her fingers warm against his skin. I don't know what I'm doing, she said softly. I don't know what this is or where it's going, but I don't want to stop. Daniel's pulse hammered in his ears. This was it. The moment where he could pull back, make an excuse, go home to his safe, predictable life. Or he could lean in. He didn't pull back. Neither do I, he said. They sat there, hands linked across the table, the restaurant noise fading into background static. Daniel felt like he was standing on the edge of something, looking down into water he couldn't see the bottom of. I should tell you something, Victoria said. Ryan doesn't know about this. About us. And I don't think he should. Not yet. Daniel's stomach dropped. He'd been trying not to think about Ryan, about what his friend would say if he found out. Now it was front and center. What happens when he does find out? I don't know. But I'm not ready to deal with that yet. Are you? Daniel thought about it. Ryan was his friend, one of the few he had left. If Ryan knew about this, about him and Victoria, it would blow everything up, their friendship. Whatever this thing was with Victoria, all of it. No, he admitted. I'm not ready either. Then we keep this between us. For now. It felt wrong. Sneaking around, hiding things. But the alternative felt worse. Okay, Daniel said. Victoria squeezed his hand once, then let go. They finished their meal in a silence that felt less heavy now, more settled. When the check came, she paid again, waving off his attempt to contribute. Outside, the night air was cool. They stood on the sidewalk like they had the night before, the moment stretching between them. I have a meeting in New York next week, Victoria said. I'll be gone for 4 days. Okay, but I'll be back Friday. Can I see you then? Yeah. She stepped closer, close enough that he could smell her perfume, something subtle, expensive. I'm not good at this, she said. The whole, feelings thing. I'm better with numbers and contracts. I'm not good at it either. Then we'll figure it out together. She kissed him. It wasn't a long kiss, wasn't desperate or demanding, just soft, deliberate, real. When she pulled back, Daniel's head was spinning. Good night, Daniel, she said. Good night. He watched her walk to her car, watched her drive away. Then he stood there for another 5 minutes, trying to get his heart rate under control. When he picked up Emma from Mrs. Chen's apartment, she was half asleep, clutching her stuffed rabbit. He carried her to the car and buckled her in. She mumbled something about ice cream and drifted back to sleep. Daniel drove home in silence, his mind racing. He'd just kissed Victoria Sterling, Ryan's mother, a woman so far out of his league they weren't even playing the same game, and she'd kissed him back. This was insane, but it was happening. The next few days passed in a blur. Daniel went to work, picked up Emma, went through the routines that made up his life. But underneath it all, he was thinking about Victoria. She texted him every day, short messages, nothing too revealing. How's your day? Thinking about you, 4 more days. It was enough to keep him tethered, to remind him it wasn't just in his head. Ryan called on Wednesday. Daniel almost didn't answer, but guilt won out. Hey man, Ryan said. You doing anything this weekend? Daniel's mind went blank. Not sure yet. Why? Thought we could grab a beer or something, catch up. I feel like I haven't seen you in forever. Yeah, sure, sounds good. Cool, I'll text you. Ryan paused. Everything okay? You sound weird. I'm fine, just tired. All right. Well, don't work too hard. See you this weekend. Daniel hung up and stared at his phone. He was lying to his friend, hiding things. It felt awful, but not awful enough to stop. On Thursday night, Victoria called instead of texting. Daniel was putting Emma to bed when his phone buzzed. He waited until she was asleep, then stepped out into the hallway and answered. Hi, he said quietly. Hi. Victoria's voice was softer than usual, almost tentative. I wanted to hear your voice. How's New York? Exhausting. I've been in meetings for 12 hours straight. I'm in my hotel room now, staring at room service. I'm too tired to eat. Daniel leaned against the wall. What kind of meetings? Acquisition talks? Boring stuff? Numbers and lawyers and men in suits who think they're smarter than me. Are they? She laughed. Not even close. That's what I figured. There was a pause. Then Victoria said, I miss you. Is that stupid? We've only spent 2 nights together. It's not stupid. I miss you too. I keep thinking about Friday, about seeing you again. Me too. Daniel? Yeah? Are you scared? He didn't have to ask what she meant. Yeah. Are you? Terrified. But you're still coming back. Yeah, I am. They talked for another 20 minutes about nothing important. Emma's latest drawing, the weather, the terrible hotel coffee. It was easy, comfortable in a way that surprised him. When they finally hung up, Daniel felt something settle in his chest. Not certainty exactly, but something close. Friday came. Daniel left work early, told his boss he had a family thing. It wasn't technically a lie. He picked up Emma from daycare and dropped her at Mrs. Chen's again. The older woman gave him a knowing look but didn't ask questions. Victoria had texted him an address. Not the restaurant this time. An apartment building downtown, the kind with a doorman and marble floors. Daniel's stomach twisted as he walked through the lobby. The doorman nodded at him like he belonged there, which only made it worse. The elevator ride to the 15th floor felt like it took an hour. When the doors opened, Victoria was waiting in the hallway outside her apartment door. She looked different. Not dressed up, not wearing the polished version of herself. Jeans, a sweater, hair down. She looked like a woman who'd just gotten home from a long trip and didn't have the energy for pretense. Hi, she said. Hi. She stepped back and he followed her inside. The apartment was massive. Floor-to-ceiling windows, expensive furniture, art on the walls that probably cost more than Daniel made in a year. But it didn't feel cold. It felt lived in. This is where you stay when you're in the city? Daniel asked. Sometimes, when I don't feel like driving home. She closed the door and turned to face him. I wasn't sure you'd come. You keep saying that. Because I keep being surprised. They stood there, the space between them crackling with tension. Daniel had thought about this moment all week, what he'd say, how he'd act. But now that he was here, all of that disappeared. Victoria closed the distance first. She kissed him, and this time it wasn't soft or tentative. It was hungry, desperate, like she'd been holding back all week and couldn't anymore. Daniel kissed her back, his hands finding her waist, pulling her closer. They broke apart, both breathing hard. I've been thinking about that for 4 days, Victoria said. So have I. She took his hand and led him to the couch. They sat down, still close, her hand in his. For a while, neither of them spoke. I don't know how to do this, Victoria said finally. I haven't done this in, I don't even know how long. Done what? This. Whatever this is. I don't date. I don't have time for relationships. And even when I did, they were always... She trailed off, searching for the word. Transactional. People wanted something from me. My name, my money, my connections. It was never just about me. This is about you. Is it? Or is it about the photo you saw? About some idea of who I am that isn't real? Daniel pulled his hand back, suddenly defensive. You think I'm here because of a picture? I don't know why you're here. I'm here because you asked me to be. Because when I'm with you, I don't feel like I'm drowning. Because you see me as more than just some guy barely keeping his head above water. His voice was sharper than he intended. If you don't want me here, just say it. Victoria's expression cracked. I do want you here. That's the problem. I want you here so much it scares me. Why does that scare you? Because I don't know what happens next. I don't know how to make this work. You have a daughter, I have a son. We live in completely different worlds, and even if we figure all that out, what happens when this ends? Because it will end. Everything ends. Jesus, Daniel said. You're already thinking about the ending? I have to. That's how I survive. I think 10 steps ahead. I plan for every contingency. I make sure I'm never caught off guard. But you can't plan this. I know. That's what scares me. Daniel looked at her, really looked at her. Not the billionaire CEO, not Ryan's mother, just Victoria. A woman who'd spent so long being in control that the idea of letting go terrified her. What do you want? He asked quietly. I want this to be real. I want it to last. I want to stop thinking about all the reasons it can't work and just be here. With you. Then do that. It's not that simple. Yeah, it is. You're the one making it complicated. Victoria stared at him for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, she laughed. You're right. I am. So stop. She kissed him again, slower this time. When she pulled back, her eyes were glassy. I don't know how to do this without planning it, she whispered. Then don't plan it. Just let it happen. They stayed like that, tangled together on the couch, talking in the gaps between kisses. Victoria told him about the acquisition deal that fell through, the board members who questioned her decisions, the constant pressure to be perfect. Daniel told her about the performance review that had him on edge, the daycare bills piling up, the nights he lay awake wondering if he was screwing up Emma's life. You're not, Victoria said firmly. Screwing up her life. You're doing everything right. It doesn't feel like it. It never does. That's part of being a parent. The doubt never goes away. Does it get easier? No, it just gets different. Somewhere around midnight, Daniel's phone buzzed. Mrs. Chen, Emma's asleep on my couch. You can pick her up in the morning if that's easier. Daniel showed Victoria the message. I should go. Or you could stay. His heart kicked. I can't. Emma, I know, but I don't want you to leave yet. I don't want to leave either. They sat there, caught between what they wanted and what they could have. 1 more hour, Victoria said. Then you can go. Okay, 1 more hour. It turned into 2. They talked about everything and nothing. She asked about his parents, both gone, car accident when he was 25. He asked about hers, father dead, mother in a care facility with dementia. They talked about the lives they'd imagined for themselves when they were younger, the ones that hadn't happened. I thought I'd be married by now, Daniel said. House in the suburbs, 2 kids, the whole thing. What happened? Life. Emma's mom. Reality. He shrugged. What about you? You ever think about getting married again? I was married, a long time ago. Ryan's father. What happened? Victoria's face hardened. He left. Decided being a husband and father wasn't as interesting as being free. Last I heard, he was living in Costa Rica with a woman half his age. I'm sorry. Don't be. I'm better off without him, so is Ryan. Do you ever talk to him? No. He signed away his parental rights when Ryan was 3. Wanted a clean break. I gave it to him. Daniel tried to imagine walking away from Emma like that. He couldn't. What kind of person does that? The kind who only cares about himself. Victoria's voice was flat. But it taught me something. I don't need anyone. I can do it all on my own. You shouldn't have to. She looked at him. What do you mean? I mean, just because you can do it alone doesn't mean you should. Everyone needs someone. Do they? Yeah, they do. Victoria's expression softened. You really believe that? I have to, otherwise what's the point? She kissed him again, and this time it was different, slower, deeper, like she was trying to memorize the feel of him. When they finally broke apart, it was almost 2 a.m. I really have to go, Daniel said. I know. They stood up. Victoria walked him to the door, her hand still in his. When can I see you again? She asked. I don't know. I've got Emma all weekend, and Ryan wants to get a beer. Victoria's face tightened. Right, Ryan. We can't avoid him forever. I know, but I'm not ready to tell him. Not yet. Neither am I. She leaned against the doorframe. This is going to get messy, isn't it? Probably. And you're still here. So are you. She smiled faintly. Yeah, I am. Daniel kissed her one more time, then forced himself to walk away before he couldn't. The elevator ride down felt longer than the ride up. When he stepped out into the cool night air, he felt like he'd been holding his breath for hours. He drove to Mrs. Chen's apartment and carried Emma to the car. She didn't wake up, just curled against his shoulder, trusting him completely. He buckled her into her seat and drove home through empty streets. At home, he tucked Emma into bed and stood in the doorway watching her sleep. Her stuffed rabbit was clutched in one hand, her face peaceful. She had no idea her father's life was spinning out of control, and he had no idea how to tell her if it ever came to that. Daniel walked back to the living room and pulled out the couch. He lay down in the dark, staring at the ceiling. His phone buzzed. I'm glad you came tonight. He smiled despite himself. Me too. Sleep well, Daniel. You too. He set the phone down and closed his eyes. Sleep didn't come for a long time, but when it finally did, he dreamed of something he hadn't let himself imagine in years. A future that didn't feel impossible. Saturday morning came too fast. Daniel woke to Emma standing beside the couch, her stuffed rabbit dangling from one hand, staring at him with those big, serious eyes that made him feel like she could see right through him. You were out late, she said. Daniel sat up, rubbing his face. Yeah, I had some work stuff. On a Friday night? Sometimes work happens at night. She didn't look convinced, but she was 6, not 16, so she let it go. Can we have pancakes now? Yeah, kiddo, we can have pancakes. They spent the morning at the park. Emma played on the swings while Daniel sat on a bench, his phone in his hand, checking it every few minutes, even though he knew Victoria probably wouldn't text. She'd said she had meetings today, some charity board thing she couldn't get out of, but he checked anyway. Around noon, Ryan called. Hey man, you still free for that beer? Daniel's stomach dropped. He'd forgotten. Or maybe he'd been trying to forget. Yeah, sure, when? How about 4? There's a place near you. Porter's? I know it. Cool, see you then. Daniel hung up and stared at the phone. 4 hours. He had 4 hours to figure out how to sit across from his friend and pretend everything was normal. Pretend he wasn't sleeping with Ryan's mother. Pretend the guilt sitting in his chest like a stone wasn't there. He took Emma home and fed her lunch. Mrs. Chen agreed to watch her again, and if she was curious about why Daniel suddenly needed so much help, she didn't say anything. Just smiled and told Emma they'd make cookies. Daniel showed up at Porter's at 4 on the dot. It was a dive bar, the kind with sticky floors and sports on every TV. Ryan was already there, sitting in a booth near the back, 2 beers on the table. You're on time, Ryan said, grinning. That's new. I'm always on time. You're never on time. Daniel slid into the booth and grabbed his beer. Ryan looked good, relaxed, tan, like he'd just come back from a vacation. Probably had. So what's been going on? Ryan asked. Feel like I haven't seen you in forever. Not much. Work. Emma, the usual. Yeah, but you seem different. Daniel's pulse spiked. Different how? I don't know. Less stressed, maybe? You've got this whole lighter vibe. I don't have a vibe. Ryan laughed. Everyone has a vibe. Yours is usually, I haven't slept in 3 days and I'm about to snap. But today, you seem good. You seen someone? Daniel almost choked on his beer. What? No. Come on, you can tell me. Is it that woman from your office? The one you said was cute? I never said anyone at my office was cute. You did, like 2 years ago. Sarah something. That was 2 years ago. And no, I'm not seeing her. I'm not seeing anyone. Ryan studied him for a second, then shrugged. All right, if you say so. They talked about other things. Ryan's job, the acquisition deal his mom was working on, some trip to Miami he was planning. Daniel listened and nodded and tried to act normal, but the whole time he felt like a fraud. Like Ryan could see right through him if he looked hard enough. How's your mom? Daniel asked, trying to sound casual. She's good. Busy as hell, but that's nothing new. She's been weird lately, though. Daniel's chest tightened. Weird how? I don't know. Distracted. She keeps disappearing for these dinners and won't say who they're with. I asked her the other day and she told me to mind my own business. Ryan laughed. I think she might be seeing someone. Daniel's throat went dry. He took a long drink of beer to buy himself time. You think so? Maybe. I mean, she's allowed to have a life, but it's weird, you know? She's never been the dating type. After my dad left, she just threw herself into work. But lately she's been different, happier, I guess. That's good, right? Yeah, I guess. I just wish she'd tell me. Daniel wanted to disappear. He wanted to sink through the floor and never come back. Instead, he sat there and drank his beer and listened to his friend talk about how happy his mother seemed, all while knowing he was the reason. You ever think about dating again? Ryan asked suddenly. What? Dating. Like seriously dating, not just hooking up. Daniel set his beer down. I don't have time for that. That's what you always say. But Emma's getting older. You can't just put your life on hold forever. I'm not putting my life on hold. I'm being a parent. You can be both. Daniel didn't answer because the truth was he was being both. He was being a parent and he was dating someone. And the two things were on a collision course he couldn't stop. They stayed at the bar for another 2 hours. By the time Daniel left, he felt hollowed out. Ryan hugged him goodbye and told him they should do this more often, and Daniel agreed even though the idea made him sick. He picked up Emma from Mrs. Chen's and took her home. She was covered in flour and proud of the cookies she'd made. Daniel told her she did a great job and let her eat 3 before bed, breaking his usual rule about sugar at night. She fell asleep with crumbs on her face, and Daniel wiped them off with a damp cloth before pulling the blanket up to her chin. His phone buzzed as he was folding up the couch. How was your day? Victoria. Daniel sat down on the edge of the couch and stared at the message. Complicated. Want to talk about it? He thought about Ryan's face, the way he'd laughed when he talked about his mom being happy, the way he'd hugged Daniel goodbye like they were still just friends with nothing between them. I saw Ryan today. The 3 dots appeared immediately, then stopped, then started again. What did you tell him? Nothing. But he asked if I was seeing someone. What did you say? I lied. There was a long pause. Daniel watched the screen, waiting. I'm sorry. For what? For putting you in this position. This isn't fair to you. Daniel typed fast, his thumbs hitting the screen harder than necessary. You didn't put me anywhere. I chose this. I'm still choosing it. Are you? He stopped. Was he? The guilt was eating him alive, but the idea of walking away felt worse. Yeah, I am. Even though it's hurting you? Even though? Another pause, then, I need to see you. When? Now. Daniel looked at the time. It was almost 10. Emma was asleep. Mrs. Chen would think he was losing his mind if he asked her to come over again. I can't. Emma's asleep, then tomorrow, please. Daniel closed his eyes. He should say no. He should slow this down, take a step back, figure out what the hell he was doing, but he didn't want to. Okay, tomorrow. They made plans. Victoria would come to his place in the afternoon while Emma was at a birthday party. It felt dangerous having her here, in the space where his real life happened. But he agreed anyway. Sunday dragged. Daniel took Emma to the birthday party at noon, some classmate's house with a bouncy castle and too much cake. He dropped her off and promised to pick her up at 3. Then he drove home and cleaned the apartment like his life depended on it. He vacuumed, scrubbed the counters, hid the pile of unpaid bills. He even put away the pull-out couch for the first time in weeks. Victoria knocked at exactly 1:30. Daniel opened the door and there she was, dressed down in jeans and a sweater, her hair loose around her shoulders. She looked nervous. Hi, she said. Hi. She stepped inside and Daniel closed the door. For a second, they just stood there in the small entryway, the weight of everything unsaid pressing down on them. This is where you live, Victoria said, looking around. Yeah, it's not much. It's perfect. She walked into the living room, taking in the crayon drawings on the fridge, the stack of Emma's books on the coffee table, the worn couch that had seen better days. It feels like a home. What does yours feel like? She turned to look at him. Empty. Daniel didn't know what to say to that. Victoria sat down on the couch, and he sat beside her, leaving a careful distance between them. I've been thinking about what you said, Victoria started, about Ryan, about lying to him. Yeah? I hate it. I hate lying. I've built my entire career on being direct, on saying exactly what I mean, and now I'm sneaking around like a teenager. So what do we do? I don't know. She looked down at her hands. If we tell him, he'll be angry. He'll feel betrayed, and I don't blame him. It's complicated. It doesn't have to be. Yes, it does. You're his friend. I'm his mother. There's no version of this that isn't complicated. Daniel leaned back against the cushions. So we just keep lying? For now. Until we figure out what this is. If it's real, or if it's just, it's real, Daniel interrupted. Victoria looked at him. How do you know? Because I can't stop thinking about you. Because when I'm with you, everything else disappears. Because I'm terrified of what happens if this falls apart, but I'm more terrified of walking away. Her eyes got glassy. Daniel, I'm not saying we have to tell Ryan tomorrow or next week, but we can't keep doing this forever, sneaking around, pretending. Eventually, something's going to break. I know. Her voice was barely a whisper, but I'm not ready for it to break yet. Neither am I. They sat in silence. Then Victoria reached for his hand, lacing her fingers through his. Can we just have today? She asked. Just one day where we don't think about what comes next? Daniel squeezed her hand. Yeah, we can have today. They spent the afternoon like that, just talking, curled up on the couch like they had all the time in the world. Victoria asked about Emma's birthday party, and Daniel told her about the bouncy castle and the kid who'd thrown up from eating too much cake. She laughed, a real laugh that made her whole face light up. Tell me something about you, Daniel said. Something no one else knows. Victoria thought for a moment. I'm scared of flying. You're kidding. I'm not. I've flown 1,000,000 times for work, but every single time I'm convinced the plane is going to crash. So what do? I close my eyes and count backward from 1,000. Sometimes I make it to 0. Most times I don't. That's the most human thing I've ever heard you say. She smiled. What about you? What's something no one knows? Daniel hesitated. Then he said, I'm terrified I'm screwing up Emma's life. You're not. You don't know that. Yes, I do, because you care enough to be scared. That's what makes you a good father. He looked at her, really looked at her, and saw something in her eyes he hadn't seen before. Belief. Not in some idea of who he could be, but in who he already was. Thank you, he said quietly. For what? For seeing me. Victoria leaned in and kissed him. It was slow, deliberate, like she was trying to memorize the feel of him. When she pulled back, her forehead rested against his. I don't want to leave, she whispered. Then don't. I have to. You have to pick up Emma. Daniel glanced at the clock. It was 2:45. 15 minutes. Not yet, he said. They stayed like that, tangled together on the couch, until the last possible second. Then Victoria pulled away and stood up, smoothing down her sweater. I'll text you tonight, she said. Okay. She walked to the door and Daniel followed. Before she left, she turned back and cupped his face in her hands. This is real, she said. Whatever happens, this is real. I know. She kissed him one more time, then walked out. Daniel watched her go down the hallway, watched her disappear around the corner. Then he grabbed his keys and went to pick up Emma. The next week was a blur. Daniel went to work, took care of Emma, texted Victoria whenever he could. They didn't see each other. She was slammed with meetings, and he had Emma full-time, but the messages were enough. Little lifelines that kept him grounded. On Wednesday, his boss called him into his office. Daniel's stomach dropped. He'd been waiting for this, the conversation about his performance, the metrics that were slipping. He sat down across from his boss and waited for the axe to fall. So I've been looking at your numbers, his boss said, flipping through a folder. I know they're not great. They're fine, Daniel. That's not why you're here. Daniel blinked. It's not? No, I wanted to talk to you about a new position. Team lead. It comes with a raise and better hours. Daniel stared at him. You're serious? Dead serious. You've been here 5 years. You know the systems inside and out, and you're reliable. That's what we need. Daniel didn't know what to say. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. It's more responsibility, but it's also more money. Think about it and let me know by Friday. Daniel walked out of the office in a daze. A promotion, a raise, better hours. It felt like the universe was throwing him a bone for the first time in years. He texted Victoria immediately. "I just got offered a promotion." Her response came fast. "That's amazing. Tell me everything." He called her instead. She answered on the second ring. "Hi," she said, and he could hear the smile in her voice. "Hi, I needed to hear your voice." "Tell me about the promotion." He told her everything, the raise, the new responsibilities, the way his boss had looked at him like he was actually worth something. Victoria listened, and when he finished, she said, "I'm so proud of you." "You barely know me." "I know enough." They talked for an hour. Victoria told him about the acquisition deal that had finally gone through, the board meeting where she'd had to fight for her vision, the late nights that were wearing her down. Daniel listened, and for the first time, he felt like they were building something. Not just attraction or chemistry, but something real. "I miss you," Victoria said quietly. "I miss you too." "When can I see you again?" "I don't know. Emma's got school stuff all week, and I promised Ryan I'd help him move some furniture on Saturday." Victoria was silent for a second. "You're going to see Ryan?" "Yeah, he asked me to help. I couldn't say no." "Right." Her voice was tight. "Of course." "Victoria, it's fine. I get it. He's your friend. He's also your son." "I know, but that doesn't make it easier." Daniel closed his eyes. "I don't know how to do this." "Neither do I, but we'll figure it out." "Will we?" "We have to." They hung up, and Daniel sat on the couch, staring at the phone in his hand. This was getting harder, not easier. The lies were piling up, the guilt was getting heavier, and sooner or later, something was going to give. Friday came. Daniel accepted the promotion. His boss shook his hand and told him he'd earned it. The raise wasn't huge, but it was enough to breathe a little easier. Enough to stop checking his bank account every morning with his heart in his throat. He texted Victoria. "I took the job." "Good. You deserve it. Thank you. For everything. You don't have to thank me. I didn't do anything. You made me believe I could." There was a long pause. Then, "I need to see you. Soon." "Next week?" "Yes. Monday. I'll make it work." Okay. Saturday, Daniel helped Ryan move a couch into his new apartment. It was across town, a penthouse with a view that made Daniel's head spin. Ryan ordered pizza, and they sat on the floor eating it, talking about nothing important. "You seem good lately," Ryan said. Daniel almost dropped his slice. "What?" "I said you seem good." "Happier. I got a promotion this week." "Yeah, that's awesome, man. Congrats." "Thanks." Ryan took a bite of pizza, chewing slowly. "You know, I've been thinking about what I said last week, about you dating." Daniel's stomach twisted. "What about it?" "I think you should. Seriously, you've been alone for too long. Emma needs to see you happy." "I am happy." "Are you?" "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're surviving, not living." Daniel set down his pizza. "What do you want me to say?" "I want you to say you'll try, that you'll put yourself out there. You deserve to have someone." "It's not that simple." "Why not?" "Because I already have someone, and it's your mother." The words were right there, sitting on the edge of his tongue. It would be so easy to say them, to just tell the truth and deal with the fallout. But he didn't. "It just isn't," Daniel said. Ryan looked at him for a long moment, then shrugged. "All right, but the offer stands. If you ever need a wingman, I'm your guy." Daniel forced a smile. "I'll keep that in mind." He left Ryan's apartment an hour later feeling worse than he had all week. The guilt was suffocating now, pressing down on his chest until he could barely breathe. He picked up Emma from her friend's house and took her home. She chattered the whole way about some game they'd played, but Daniel barely heard her. His mind was somewhere else. That night, after Emma was asleep, Victoria called. "Hi," he said. "Hi, how was your day?" "Terrible." "What happened?" He told her about Ryan, about the conversation, about the way his friend had looked at him with so much trust it made him sick. "I can't keep doing this," Daniel said. "I can't keep lying to him." "So what do you want to do?" "I don't know. Tell him? Not see you anymore?" "I don't know." Victoria was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "If you want to walk away, I'll understand." "Do you want me to walk away?" "No." But I'm not going to make you stay if this is tearing you apart. Daniel rubbed his face. I don't want to walk away, but I don't know how to keep going like this. Then we tell him, together. When? Soon, before this gets worse. It's already worse. I know. Her voice was soft. But we'll get through it. You don't know that. No, but I have to believe it. Otherwise, what's the point? They talked until almost midnight. By the time they hung up, Daniel felt wrung out, exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with sleep. Monday came. Victoria texted him an address. A hotel this time, neutral ground. Daniel took a half day off work, told his boss he had a family emergency. It wasn't technically a lie. He met her in the lobby at 2. She looked tired, like she hadn't slept in days. They didn't say anything, just walked to the elevator and rode it to the 10th floor in silence. The room was nice. Too nice for what felt like a conversation about the end of something. They sat on the edge of the bed, not touching. I've been thinking, Victoria said, about what you said, about telling Ryan. And? I think you're right. We can't keep doing this. It's not fair to him, or to us. Daniel nodded. So we tell him. Together, this weekend. I'll invite him over for dinner, and we'll tell him then. What if he hates me? He won't hate you. He might. Victoria took his hand. Then we deal with it. But we deal with it together. Daniel looked at her. At the woman who'd turned his whole life upside down in the span of 2 weeks. He thought about walking away, about going back to his quiet, safe, predictable life. And he knew he couldn't. Okay, he said. We tell him. Victoria kissed him, and it felt like a promise, like they were sealing something that couldn't be undone. They spent the rest of the afternoon in that hotel room, holding on to each other like it was the last time, even though they both knew it wasn't. When Daniel finally left, the sun was setting. He drove home with the windows down, the cool air rushing past, and tried to imagine what would happen when Ryan found out. He couldn't. All he knew was that in 3 days everything would change, and there was no going back. The next 3 days felt like waiting for an execution. Daniel went through the motions, work, Emma, bedtime routines, but his mind was stuck on Saturday night, on what would happen when Ryan found out. He played through 100 different scenarios, and none of them ended well. Tuesday morning, Emma spilled juice all over herself at breakfast. Daniel cleaned her up and got her to daycare 10 minutes late. His boss stopped by his desk to congratulate him again on the promotion, and Daniel smiled and said thank you, even though he felt like throwing up. At lunch, he sat in his car and stared at his phone, willing it to ring. Willing Victoria to call and say she'd changed her mind, that they should wait, that they didn't have to do this yet. The phone didn't ring. That night, after Emma was asleep, Victoria texted, I told Ryan I'm having someone over for dinner Saturday. He thinks it's a business thing. Daniel stared at the message. Did you tell him I'd be there? Not yet. I will on Saturday, right before you arrive. That's going to make it worse. I know, but if I tell him now, he'll have 3 days to work himself up. This way, we control the narrative. Daniel didn't think they controlled anything, but he didn't argue. What time? 7. I'll text you the address. Okay. He set the phone down and sat on the edge of the couch, head in his hands. This was really happening. In 4 days, he was going to sit across from Ryan and tell him he was seeing his mother. And there was no version of that conversation that didn't end in disaster. Wednesday dragged. Thursday was worse. Friday, Daniel could barely function. He made mistakes at work, small ones, nothing catastrophic, but enough that his coworker asked if he was feeling okay. He said he was fine. He wasn't fine. That night, Emma asked him why he seemed sad. I'm not sad, kiddo, he said, forcing a smile. You look sad. I'm just tired. Is it because of work? Yeah, work stuff. She climbed into his lap and wrapped her small arms around his neck. You're the best daddy. Don't let work make you sad. Daniel held her tight, his throat closing up. She was so small, so trusting. She had no idea her world might be about to change, and he had no idea how to protect her from it. Saturday came. Daniel woke up with his stomach in knots. He took Emma to the park, then to lunch, then to a movie. Anything to keep busy, to keep his mind off what was coming. At 5, he dropped her at Mrs. Chen's, The older woman gave him a concerned look. "You look terrible," she said. "Thanks. You sure you're okay?" "I'm fine. Just a hard conversation tonight." "Well, good luck with it." Daniel drove across the city to Victoria's house. He'd never been there before. She'd given him the address, but he'd looked it up on a map days ago, staring at the satellite view like it might prepare him. It didn't. The house was in a gated community, the kind with security at the entrance and houses that sat on acres of land. The guard checked his name against a list and waved him through. Daniel drove down tree-lined streets until he found the address. The house was massive, modern architecture, floor-to-ceiling windows, a circular driveway with a fountain in the middle. He parked and sat in the car for a full minute, gripping the steering wheel. This was insane. He didn't belong here. He didn't belong in Victoria's world. And he sure as hell didn't belong sitting down to dinner with her and Ryan to announce they were together. But he got out of the car anyway. Victoria answered the door. She was wearing a simple dress, her hair pulled back, minimal makeup. She looked nervous. "Hi," she said quietly. "Hi." She stepped aside to let him in. The inside of the house was as stunning as the outside. High ceilings, art on the walls, furniture that looked like it belonged in a magazine. But it felt cold, impersonal, like a showroom instead of a home. "Ryan's in the living room," Victoria said. "I told him you were coming 5 minutes ago." Daniel's stomach dropped. "What did he say?" "He asked why. I said we'd explain over dinner." "How did he look?" "Confused." "Great." Daniel followed Victoria through the house. They walked past a dining room with a table that could seat 20, past a kitchen that was bigger than his entire apartment. Then they turned a corner, and there was Ryan. He was standing by the windows, hands in his pockets, staring out at the backyard. He turned when he heard them, and his expression was unreadable. "Hey, man," Ryan said. His voice was careful, controlled. "Hey," Daniel managed. Ryan looked between them. "So, what's going on?" Victoria gestured toward the couch. "Let's sit down." They sat, Victoria and Daniel on one couch, Ryan across from them in a chair. The silence stretched out, heavy and suffocating. Daniel could hear his own heartbeat. "Mom?" Ryan said finally. "What is this?" Victoria took a breath. "Daniel and I have been seeing each other." The words hung in the air. Ryan blinked, his face blank. Then he laughed, a short, sharp sound that had nothing to do with humor. "You're joking." "I'm not." Ryan looked at Daniel. "You're seeing my mother?" Daniel nodded. "Yeah." "Since when?" "A few weeks." Ryan stood up. "A few weeks? And you didn't think to mention it?" "We were trying to figure out how to tell you," Victoria said. "How to tell me?" Ryan's voice was rising. "You've had weeks. You could have told me at any point, but instead you lied, both of you." "We didn't lie," Daniel started. "You didn't tell the truth. That's the same thing." Ryan turned to Victoria. "How did this even happen?" "I left my phone at Daniel's apartment. I went to pick it up. We started talking." "And what?" "You just decided to start dating." "It wasn't that simple." "Then explain it to me, because right now it sounds like you went behind my back with my friend." Victoria's jaw tightened. "I'm allowed to have a life, Ryan. I'm not saying you're not, but him?" Ryan pointed at Daniel. "You couldn't find anyone else? You had to pick the one person who's supposed to be my friend?" Daniel stood up. "Don't talk about her like that." "Like what?" "Like she's the problem here." Ryan laughed again, bitter. "Oh, so now you're defending her? That's rich." "Ryan," Victoria started. "No. I want to hear this. I want to hear how my best friend justifies sleeping with my mother." The words hit like a punch. Daniel felt his face flush. "It's not like that." "Then what is it like?" "It's..." Daniel struggled to find the words. "It's real. What we have. It's not some fling or some mistake. It's real." Ryan stared at him. "You really believe that?" "Yeah, I do." "Then you're delusional. This is never going to work. You know that, right? You're a single dad barely making ends meet, and she's a billionaire CEO. You think this ends any way other than badly?" "Ryan," Victoria said sharply, "that's enough." "No, it's not. Because he needs to hear it. This isn't some fairy tale. This is real life. And in real life, people like you don't end up with people like her. Daniel felt the words like a knife, because part of him believed them. Part of him had been thinking the exact same thing for weeks. You don't get to decide that, Daniel said quietly. I'm not deciding anything. I'm stating facts. No, you're being an asshole because you're hurt. And I get it. I do. But don't stand there and tell me what I deserve. Ryan's expression hardened. I thought you were my friend. I am your friend. No, a friend wouldn't do this. A friend wouldn't go behind my back and lie for weeks. I was trying to protect you. From what? The truth? That's not protection. That's cowardice. The word landed hard. Daniel felt something crack inside him. You're right, he said. I should have told you sooner. I should have been honest from the start. But I wasn't, and I'm sorry. But I'm not sorry about her. I'm not sorry about what we have. Ryan looked at him for a long moment. Then he turned to Victoria. Did you think about me at all when you started this? He asked. Or was I just not part of the equation? Victoria's eyes filled with tears. Of course I thought about you. You're my son. I think about you every second of every day. Then how could you do this? Because for once in my life, I wanted something for myself. Not for the company, not for the board, not for anyone else. Just for me. Ryan's face crumpled. And that something was him? Yes. He shook his head, looking between them. I can't do this. I can't sit here and watch this. He walked toward the door. Victoria stood up. Ryan, please, don't leave like this. What do you want me to do? Stay for dinner? Pretend everything's fine? I want you to try to understand. I don't want to understand. I want you to stop. Both of you, just stop. We can't, Victoria said softly. Ryan stopped in the doorway, his back to them. Then I guess we're done here. He walked out. The front door slammed a second later, the sound echoing through the house. Victoria stood frozen, tears streaming down her face. Daniel felt like he couldn't breathe. I should go after him, Victoria said. Let him cool off first. What if he doesn't cool off? What if he never forgives me? He will. He's angry right now, but he'll come around. Victoria looked at him, her face breaking. You don't know that. No, but I have to believe it. She collapsed onto the couch, her head in her hands. Daniel sat beside her, putting his arm around her shoulders. She leaned into him, shaking. I knew this would be bad, she whispered, but I didn't think it would feel like this. Like what? Like I just lost my son. Daniel didn't know what to say. Because she might have. Ryan's face when he walked out, that wasn't just anger, that was betrayal. And betrayal didn't heal quickly. They sat there for a long time, the house silent around them. Eventually, Victoria pulled away and wiped her eyes. I'm sorry, she said. For what? For dragging you into this, for making you lose your friend. You didn't make me do anything. I chose this, just like you did. Do you regret it? Daniel thought about it, about Ryan's face, the words he'd said, the friendship that might be broken beyond repair. And then he thought about Victoria, about the way she saw him, the way she made him feel, the future they might have if they could just get through this. No, he said, I don't regret it. Victoria kissed him, desperate and searching, like she was trying to make sure he was real, that this was real. When she pulled back, her eyes were red. What do we do now? She asked. We give him time, we let him process, and then we try again. And if he doesn't want to try? Then we deal with that when it happens. Victoria nodded, but she didn't look convinced. Daniel didn't blame her. He wasn't convinced either. He stayed with her for another hour. They didn't talk much, just sat together on the couch, holding on to each other like they were afraid to let go. Eventually, Daniel checked the time. It was almost 9. He needed to pick up Emma. I have to go, he said. I know. He stood up, and Victoria walked him to the door. They stood in the entryway, neither wanting to say goodbye. Text me when you get home, Victoria said. I will. And Daniel? Yeah? Thank you for standing up for me tonight, for not walking away when things got hard. I'm not going to walk away. Promise? I promise. She kissed him one more time, soft and lingering. Then he left. Daniel drove home in a fog. He picked up Emma from Mrs. Chen's, carried her sleepy body to the car, buckled her in. She mumbled something about cookies and fell back asleep. At home, he tucked her into bed and stood in the doorway watching her. She looked so peaceful, so untouched by the chaos swirling around him. He wanted to keep her that way forever. His phone buzzed. Ryan just called me. He said he needs space, that he can't talk to me right now. Daniel's chest tightened. He'll come around. You keep saying that. But what if he doesn't? Then we figure it out together. There was a long pause. I don't want to lose you. You're not going to lose me. How do you know? Because I'm not going anywhere. Daniel sent the message and waited. The 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Okay, I believe you. He set the phone down and sat on the edge of the couch. The weight of the night pressed down on him. Ryan's anger, Victoria's tears, the friendship that might be over. But underneath all of it was something else, something steady. He'd meant what he said. He wasn't walking away. Not from Victoria, not from this. Whatever came next, they'd face it together. Sunday was quiet. Daniel took Emma to the park, made her lunch, let her watch cartoons. She asked why he seemed sad again, and he told her he was just tired. She didn't push. Victoria didn't text all day. Neither did Ryan. The silence was deafening. Monday, Daniel went to work and tried to focus. His boss asked how he was settling into the new role, and Daniel said fine. It was a lie. He wasn't fine. But he was getting good at lying. At lunch, he sat in his car and called Victoria. She answered on the 3rd ring. Hi, she said. She sounded exhausted. Hi, how are you? I don't know. Numb, I think. Have you heard from Ryan? No, I called him yesterday and he didn't pick up. I texted this morning and he read it but didn't respond. Give him time. Everyone keeps saying that, but time doesn't fix everything. No, but it helps. Victoria sighed. I miss you. I miss you too. When can I see you? I don't know. Emma's got school stuff this week and I'm trying to keep things as normal as possible for her. Right. Of course. But I'll figure something out, I promise. Okay. They talked for a few more minutes, neither really knowing what to say. When they hung up, Daniel felt hollowed out. That night, Ryan called. Daniel almost didn't answer, but he did. Hey, Daniel said carefully. Don't, Ryan said. His voice was flat. Don't say hi like we're still friends. We are still friends. No, we're not. Friends don't lie. Friends don't betray each other. I didn't. You did. You looked me in the eye and lied for weeks. You let me talk about how happy my mom seemed, and you didn't say a word. That's not friendship. That's cowardice. Daniel didn't argue, because Ryan was right. I'm sorry, Daniel said quietly. Sorry doesn't fix it. I know, but it's all I have. Ryan was silent for a long time. Then he said, I need you to stay away from her. Daniel's chest tightened. I can't do that. Yes, you can. No, I can't, and I won't. Then you're choosing her over me. I'm not choosing anything. You're the one making this a choice. Because it is a choice. Her or me. Pick one. Daniel closed his eyes. That's not fair. Fair? You want to talk about fair? You slept with my mother, Daniel. You don't get to talk to me about fair. I didn't sleep with her to hurt you. But you did it anyway. Because I care about her, because she makes me feel like I'm worth something. And I don't? That's not what I said. Then what are you saying? I'm saying I'm not sorry for being with her. I'm sorry for how we handled it, for not telling you sooner, but I'm not sorry about her. Ryan laughed, bitter and broken. You're unbelievable. I'm being honest. You're being selfish. Maybe, but so are you. The line went silent. Daniel thought Ryan might hang up. Instead, he said, I don't want to see you anymore. I don't want to talk to you. As far as I'm concerned, we're done. Ryan, I mean it. Stay away from me, and stay away from my mother. This time he did hang up. Daniel sat there, the phone still pressed to his ear, listening to the dial tone. It was over. His friendship with Ryan was over. He should have felt devastated, and part of him did. But another part, a bigger part, felt something else. Relief. Because the lying was over. The hiding was over. Now it was just him and Victoria and whatever came next. He texted her. Ryan called. He said, "We're done." Her response came immediately. "I'm so sorry." "Don't be." He made his choice. "And you made yours?" "Yeah, I did." "No regrets?" Daniel thought about it, about Ryan's anger, the friendship that was gone, the future that was uncertain. And then he thought about Victoria, about the way she looked at him, the way she made him feel seen. "No regrets. I love you." The words stopped him cold. He stared at them, his heart pounding. She'd never said that before. Neither had he. It felt too big, too soon, but it also felt true. He typed back slowly, "I love you too." The three dots appeared. Then, "Come over, please. I need to see you." "When?" "Now." Daniel looked at the clock. It was almost 8. Emma was asleep. He could call Mrs. Chen, ask her to come over, make up another excuse. Or he could stay, be the father Emma needed, keep his life stable. But he didn't want to. He called Mrs. Chen. She answered on the second ring. "Daniel, everything okay?" "Yeah, I need a favor. Can you come over and stay with Emma for a couple hours? I know it's late, but..." "Of course. Give me 10 minutes." She didn't ask questions, just showed up, took one look at his face, and nodded. Daniel thanked her and left. He drove to Victoria's house with his heart in his throat. She was waiting at the door when he pulled up, still in the same clothes from earlier. She looked wrecked. "Hi," she said. "Hi." She pulled him inside and kissed him before he could say anything else. It was desperate, searching, like she needed to make sure he was real. Daniel kissed her back, his hands finding her waist, pulling her closer. They broke apart, both breathing hard. "I meant it," Victoria said. "I love you." "I know." "Say it again." "I love you." She kissed him again, slower this time. Then she took his hand and led him through the house to a room he hadn't seen before. Her bedroom. It was massive, with windows overlooking the backyard, a bed that could fit 4 people. They didn't talk. They didn't need to. They already knew what this was. 2 people who'd chosen each other despite everything, despite the odds, despite the wreckage left behind. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the dark, Victoria's head on Daniel's chest, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her shoulder. "What happens now?" she asked quietly. "I don't know." "That's not very reassuring." "I'm not very good at reassuring." She smiled against his skin. "You're better than you think." They lay there in silence for a while. Then Victoria said, "Ryan's going to hate me for a long time." "Maybe." "You don't think so?" "I think he'll come around eventually, but even if he doesn't, it doesn't change anything." "Doesn't it?" "No, because I'm not going anywhere." Victoria lifted her head to look at him. "You keep saying that." "Because it's true. What if it gets harder? What if things fall apart? Then we put them back together." "You make it sound so simple." "It's not simple, but it's worth it." She kissed him, soft and lingering. "I don't deserve you." "Yeah, you do." "How do you know?" "Because you're here. Because you chose this even when it was hard. That's all that matters." Victoria's eyes filled with tears. "I'm scared." "So am I." "But you're staying anyway." "Yeah, I'm staying anyway." She curled back against him, and Daniel held her, feeling the weight of everything they'd just done. The friendship lost, the lines crossed, the future uncertain. But underneath all of it was something else, something steady and real. They'd chosen each other, and whatever came next, they'd face it together. Daniel left Victoria's house at 3 in the morning. The drive home was quiet, the streets empty except for the occasional taxi or delivery truck. He felt wrung out, exhausted in a way that went beyond physical tiredness. But underneath the exhaustion was something else, a kind of certainty he hadn't felt in years. Mrs. Chen was asleep on his couch when he got home. He woke her gently, apologized for being gone so long. She waved him off with a knowing smile and told him she was happy for him. Daniel didn't ask how she knew. Maybe it was written all over his face. He checked on Emma, still asleep, her stuffed rabbit tucked under her chin, then collapsed onto the pull-out couch without bothering to fold it up. Sleep came fast and hard, dreamless. The next few weeks were strange. Daniel settled into his new role at work, the raise making a real difference for the first time. He could pay the daycare bill without checking his account 3 times. He could buy Emma new shoes when she needed them instead of waiting until the old ones fell apart. Small things, but they mattered. Victoria called every night. They talked about everything: work stress, Emma's latest drawing, the board meeting where Victoria had to fight off a hostile takeover attempt. Sometimes they talked for hours, sometimes just 15 minutes before one of them had to go. But they talked every night without fail. They saw each other when they could. Victoria would drive to his side of the city late at night after Emma was asleep. They'd sit on his couch drinking wine from mismatched glasses, talking until dawn. Or Daniel would meet her at the apartment downtown on his lunch breaks, stealing an hour in the middle of the day. It wasn't enough, but it was what they had. Ryan didn't call, didn't text. It was like he'd erased Daniel from his life completely. Daniel tried reaching out twice, once a week after their last conversation, once 2 weeks later. Both messages went unanswered. Victoria tried too, leaving voicemails that Ryan never returned. After a while, they stopped trying. The silence hurt, but there was nothing they could do about it. A month passed, then 6 weeks. Daniel started to think this was just how things would be now. Him and Victoria finding stolen moments between their real lives, Ryan's absence a constant ache neither of them talked about. Then Emma asked the question he'd been dreading. It was a Tuesday night. Daniel was making dinner, spaghetti, Emma's favorite, when she looked up from her coloring book and said, "Daddy, do you have a girlfriend?" Daniel almost dropped the pot. "What? A girlfriend? Do you have one? Why are you asking me that?" Emma shrugged. "You've been happy lately, and you go out at night sometimes. Mrs. Chen says you're seeing someone." Daniel made a mental note to have a conversation with Mrs. Chen about boundaries. "She said that?" "Not exactly, but I heard her tell Mrs. Park that you looked like a man in love." Daniel set down the spoon and turned to face his daughter. She was 6 years old, too smart for her own good, looking at him with those serious eyes that saw too much. "Yeah," he said finally. "I'm seeing someone." Emma's face lit up. "Really? Who is she?" "Her name is Victoria." "What's she like?" Daniel thought about how to answer that. "She's smart and kind, and she makes me happy." "Is she pretty?" "Very." "Can I meet her?" The question hit him like a truck. He hadn't thought that far ahead, hadn't let himself imagine what it would look like for Emma to meet Victoria, for his two worlds to collide. "Maybe," he said carefully. "Someday." "Why not now?" "Because it's complicated." "Why?" "Because grown-up relationships are complicated." Emma went back to her coloring. "I think you should introduce me. If she makes you happy, I want to meet her." Daniel looked at his daughter, this small, perfect person who trusted him completely, and felt something shift in his chest. She was right. If this thing with Victoria was real, if it was going to last, then hiding it from Emma didn't make sense. She deserved to know. She deserved to be part of his life, all of it. That night, after Emma was asleep, Daniel called Victoria. "Emma asked if I have a girlfriend," he said. "What did you tell her?" "The truth, that I'm seeing someone." Victoria was quiet for a moment. "How did she react?" "She wants to meet you." Another pause. "And how do you feel about that?" "Terrified." Victoria laughed softly. "Me too. But I think we should do it. I think it's time." "Are you sure?" "No, but I'm doing it anyway." They made plans for that weekend. Victoria would come to the apartment Saturday afternoon. Nothing fancy, just the three of them. Daniel told Emma on Friday night, and she spent the next 24 hours asking questions. What does Victoria look like? What does she do? Does she like kids? Does she know how to play Uno? Daniel answered as best he could, but the truth was he didn't know how this would go. Emma had never met anyone he'd dated. Not that there'd been anyone to meet in the 6 years since her mother left. This was new territory for both of them. Saturday arrived. Daniel cleaned the apartment within an inch of its life. Emma picked out her favorite dress, purple with flowers on it, and insisted on wearing her sparkly shoes. At 2 o'clock, there was a knock on the door. Daniel opened it to find Victoria standing in the hallway, looking more nervous than he'd ever seen her. She was dressed casually, jeans and a sweater, but she kept fidgeting with her purse strap. "Hi," she said. Hi, come in. Victoria stepped inside, and Emma appeared from the bedroom like she'd been launched from a cannon. Are you Victoria? She asked. Victoria smiled. I am. You must be Emma. Daddy says you're his girlfriend. He's right. Emma looked her up and down, assessing. You're really pretty. Thank you. So are you. I know. Emma grabbed Victoria's hand. Do you want to see my drawings? Victoria looked at Daniel, who shrugged helplessly. Sure, Victoria said. I'd love to. Emma dragged her to the coffee table where she'd laid out every picture she'd drawn in the last month. Victoria sat on the floor beside her, and for the next 20 minutes, Emma explained each drawing in painstaking detail. Victoria listened like it was the most important presentation she'd ever heard. Daniel watched from the kitchen, his chest tight. He'd been so worried about how this would go, but Emma had taken to Victoria immediately. And Victoria, this woman who ran a billion-dollar company, who terrified boardrooms full of executives, was sitting on his living room floor admiring crayon drawings like they were masterpieces. Eventually, Emma ran out of pictures. She looked at Victoria seriously and said, Do you know how to play Uno? I do. Good. We're playing. They played Uno for an hour. Emma won 3 games in a row and declared herself the champion. Victoria accepted defeat gracefully. Then Emma asked if Victoria wanted to stay for dinner. If that's okay with your dad, Victoria said. Daniel nodded. Of course. He made spaghetti again. It was the only thing he could cook reliably. And they ate at the small kitchen table. Emma talked nonstop, telling Victoria about school and her friends and the time she'd fallen off the monkey bars and had to get stitches. Victoria listened to all of it, asking questions in the right places, laughing at Emma's jokes. After dinner, Emma started to fade. Daniel told her it was bedtime, and for once, she didn't argue. She hugged Victoria goodnight. I like you, Emma said. You should come back. Victoria's eyes got shiny. I'd like that. Daniel tucked Emma into bed, read her a story, kissed her forehead. When he came back to the living room, Victoria was standing by the window, looking out at the city lights. That went well, Daniel said. Victoria turned to face him. She's amazing. You've done such a good job with her. I've done my best. It's more than that. She's happy, confident. She knows she's loved. That's everything. Daniel walked over and took her hand. Thank you. For what? For being so good with her. For not making it weird. Why would I make it weird? She's your daughter. She's part of your life. That means she's part of mine now, too. Something in Daniel's chest cracked open. He pulled Victoria close and kissed her, slow and deep. I love you, he said. I love you, too. They stood like that for a long time, wrapped around each other in the small living room. Then Victoria's phone rang. She pulled it out of her purse and looked at the screen. Her whole body went rigid. It's Ryan, she said. Daniel's heart kicked. Answer it. Victoria hesitated, then swiped to accept. Hello? Daniel couldn't hear the other side of the conversation, but he watched Victoria's face. She listened for a long time, her expression unreadable. Then she said, Okay, yes, I'll be there. She hung up and looked at Daniel. He wants to meet tomorrow, just him and me. That's good, right? I don't know. I don't know. Do you want me to come with you? No. I think this is something I need to do alone. Daniel nodded. Okay, but call me after. Let me know how it goes. I will. Victoria left a few minutes later. Daniel stood at the window watching her car disappear down the street, anxiety churning in his gut. This could go one of 2 ways. Either Ryan was ready to talk, or he was ready to cut Victoria out of his life completely. There was no middle ground. The next day dragged. Daniel took Emma to the park, then to lunch, but his mind was somewhere else. Victoria texted him at noon, meeting him at 2. I'm terrified. You'll be fine. Just be honest. What if that's not enough? Then we deal with it, together. The afternoon crawled by. 3 o'clock came and went. 4, 5. Daniel's phone stayed silent. He tried not to panic, but by 6, he was pacing the apartment. Finally, at 6:30, his phone rang. How did it go? He asked immediately. Victoria's voice was thick, like she'd been crying. It was hard. Tell me. We met at a coffee shop. Neutral territory. He looked at me like I was a stranger. And then he just unloaded everything he'd been holding in for weeks. He said I betrayed him, that I chose you over him, that he didn't know if he could forgive me. Daniel's chest tightened. What did you say? I told him the truth, that I didn't choose you over him, that it's not a competition, that I can love you both, but he doesn't see it that way. Did he say anything else? He asked me if I was serious about you, if this was real or just some midlife crisis. What did you tell him? That it's real, that I love you, and that I'm not walking away. Daniel exhaled slowly. How did he take that? He didn't say anything for a long time. Then he asked if you make me happy. And? I said yes, that you make me happier than I've been in years. Victoria paused. He said he needs more time, but he's willing to try to understand. Relief flooded through Daniel. That's huge. Is it? Because it doesn't feel huge. It feels like we're still a million miles apart. But he's trying. That's more than we had yesterday. Victoria let out a shaky breath. You're right. I want my son back. I want him to look at me the way he used to. He will. It's just going to take time. Everyone keeps saying that because it's true. They talked for another hour. Victoria told him the rest of the conversation. How Ryan had asked about Emma, about Daniel's life, about how they were making this work. How she'd answered every question honestly, even when it hurt. How Ryan had finally said he wasn't ready to see Daniel yet, but maybe someday. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. The weeks that followed were easier. Ryan started texting Victoria again. Short messages at first, then longer ones. They had coffee a few more times. It was stilted, awkward, but it was something. Victoria cried after every meeting, but they were good tears, relieved tears. Daniel and Victoria found a rhythm. She came over once a week for dinner with him and Emma. They went to the park together, played games, watched movies. Emma adored her. Sometimes Daniel would catch Victoria looking at Emma with this expression, soft, wondering, like she couldn't quite believe this was her life now. 2 months after Ryan's first call, Victoria invited Daniel to a gala, some charity event her company was sponsoring. Daniel almost said no. The idea of wearing a tux and making small talk with billionaires made him want to throw up, but Victoria asked him to be her date, her official, public date. Are you sure? Daniel asked. I'm sure. I'm tired of hiding. I want people to know about you, about us. What about Ryan? I talked to him. He knows. He's not thrilled, but he said he won't stand in the way. Daniel couldn't quite believe it. He said that? Not in those words, but that was the gist. So Daniel rented a tux and showed up at the gala feeling like a fraud. The venue was some museum downtown, all marble floors and crystal chandeliers. Victoria was waiting for him at the entrance, wearing a black dress that made his brain short-circuit. You look beautiful, he said. You look terrified. I am terrified. She took his hand. Don't be. You belong here. I really don't. You're with me. That means you belong. They walked in together. People stared. Daniel could feel their eyes, hear the whispers. Who is that? Is that Victoria Sterling's date? But Victoria held his hand like she didn't care, like she was proud to have him there. They made it through the cocktail hour. Daniel met more people than he could keep track of, CEOs, investors, politicians. Everyone wanted to talk to Victoria, and she introduced Daniel every single time. This is Daniel Hayes, my partner. She said it like it was the most natural thing in the world. Halfway through the night, Daniel excused himself to use the bathroom. When he came back, Ryan was standing next to Victoria. Daniel stopped in his tracks. This was the first time they'd been in the same room since that dinner at Victoria's house. Ryan looked different, older maybe, or just tired. Their eyes met. Ryan's expression was unreadable. Daniel, Ryan said. Ryan. An awkward silence stretched between them. Victoria looked between them, her face tense. I'm going to get a drink, she said. I'll be right back. She walked away, leaving them alone. Daniel shoved his hands in his pockets. You look uncomfortable, Ryan said. I am uncomfortable. Good. You should be. Daniel didn't know what to say to that. Ryan looked at him for a long moment, then sighed. My mom looks happy, Ryan said. She is. Because of you? I hope so. Ryan's jaw tightened. I'm still angry at you, both of you. I don't know if that's going to change. I know, but I can see that she loves you and that you love her, and I'm trying to accept that. Ryan paused. Trying. Not succeeding yet, but trying. Daniel felt something loosen in his chest. That's all I can ask for. Don't make her regret this. Don't make me regret giving you a chance. I won't. Ryan nodded once, then walked away. Daniel stood there, his heart pounding. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was something. Victoria reappeared a minute later. What happened? We talked. And I think maybe we're going to be okay. She smiled, real and bright. Good, because I need you both, and I'm not giving up either of you. The rest of the night passed in a blur. Daniel danced with Victoria, badly, but she didn't seem to mind. They ate dinner at a table full of people Daniel didn't know and probably wouldn't remember. But it didn't matter, because Victoria's hand was in his, and for the first time they weren't hiding. 3 months later, Daniel moved into a bigger apartment. 2 bedrooms, so Emma could have her own space and he didn't have to sleep on a pull-out couch anymore. Victoria helped him move, showing up in jeans and a baseball cap, carrying boxes like it was nothing. Ryan came too. He didn't say much, but he carried furniture and stayed for pizza afterward. It was awkward, but it was progress. Emma asked if Victoria was going to move in with them. Daniel said, not yet, but maybe someday. Emma seemed satisfied with that. 6 months after that night at the gala, Victoria invited Daniel and Emma to spend Christmas at her house. Ryan would be there too. Daniel almost said no. The idea of all of them together still felt fragile, like something that could break if handled wrong. But Emma wanted to go, and Victoria wanted them there, so Daniel said yes. Christmas morning was strange. Daniel woke up in Victoria's guest room. She'd insisted they stay over rather than drive across the city, and for a moment he didn't know where he was. Then he heard Emma's laughter from downstairs, and he followed the sound. Victoria and Emma were in the kitchen making pancakes. Ryan was at the table drinking coffee, scrolling through his phone. When Daniel walked in, Ryan looked up. Morning, Ryan said. Morning. It wasn't much, but it was more than they'd had a year ago. They opened presents after breakfast. Emma tore through hers with the enthusiasm only a 7-year-old could muster. Victoria had gotten her art supplies and books and a stuffed elephant she immediately named Charlie. Daniel gave her a new bike. Ryan gave her a board game they played later that afternoon. It wasn't perfect. There were still awkward silences, still moments where Daniel caught Ryan looking at him with something hard in his eyes. But there were also moments of laughter, moments where it felt almost normal. That night, after Emma was asleep, Daniel and Victoria sat on the couch in her living room. Ryan had gone out with friends. It was just the two of them. Thank you, Victoria said. For what? For this, for giving me a family again. I didn't think I'd ever have this. Daniel kissed her forehead. You don't have to thank me. Yes, I do. Because you changed my life. You made me believe I could have more than just work, that I could be more than just a CEO or a mother, that I could be a woman, someone's partner. You were always all those things, but I didn't feel like it, not until you. They sat in comfortable silence, Victoria's head on Daniel's shoulder. Outside, snow was starting to fall. Daniel watched it through the window, thinking about how far they'd come. A year ago, he'd been standing in his apartment holding a phone he wasn't supposed to see. Now he was here, in Victoria's house, with Emma asleep upstairs and a future that felt almost possible. What are you thinking about? Victoria asked. How scared I was when this started. How sure I was that it would end badly. And now? Now I think maybe we can do this. Maybe we can make it work. Victoria lifted her head to look at him. Just maybe? Daniel smiled. Definitely. We can definitely make it work. She kissed him, slow and sweet. When she pulled back, her eyes were shining. I love you, Daniel Hayes. I love you too. They stayed like that, wrapped around each other, until the clock struck midnight and Christmas was officially over. But Daniel didn't feel like anything was ending. For the first time in his life, it felt like something was just beginning. The truth was, none of it had been easy. Loving Victoria had cost him a friendship, at least for a while. It had meant facing his own fears, his own insecurities about not being good enough or rich enough or worthy enough. It had meant letting Emma see him as more than just her father, as a man who could love and be loved. It had meant standing in rooms where he didn't belong and refusing to apologize for being there. But it had also taught him something he'd forgotten, that being seen, really seen by another person, was worth the risk. That vulnerability wasn't weakness. That choosing love, even when it was complicated and messy and hard, was the bravest thing you could do. Emma grew up watching her father choose that kind of love. She learned that relationships weren't about perfection or ease. They were about showing up even when it was hard, about choosing someone over and over again, even when the world told you it didn't make sense. Ryan eventually came around. It took time, months, then years, but the anger faded. He saw how happy his mother was, how Daniel treated her with respect and care. He saw Emma growing up with two parents who loved her, even if one of them wasn't biologically hers. And slowly, he let go of the betrayal and accepted what was in front of him. It wasn't the friendship he'd had with Daniel before. That was gone, burned up in the fire of what had happened. But it was something new, something honest. As for Daniel and Victoria, they built a life together. Not overnight, not easily. There were arguments and misunderstandings and moments where they both wanted to walk away. But they didn't. They stayed. They chose each other every single day, even on the days when it was hard. Because that's what love is. Not the butterflies or the grand gestures or the perfect moments. It's the choice to stay when staying is hard. It's the willingness to be seen with all your flaws and fears and imperfections. It's two people looking at each other and saying, "You're worth it. We're worth it." And in the end, they were.